Hi there. Today we're going to talk about poetry and we're going to learn about different things like chapters, stanzas, and scenes. We're going to talk about what the relationship is between all of them. We're going into a unit about poetry and we're going to learn all the different types of poems. You may have learned this kind of thing in second grade as well. So today we're going to talk about what the relationship is between chapter, stanza, and scene. A stanza is one of the units consisting of two or more lines into which a poem or a song is divided, like a verse. The word stanza means room in Italian. Take a look at this poem. This poem is written by J. Patrick Lewis. It's called Sandhouse. It says, I built a house one afternoon with a bucket, cup, and tablespoon, then scooped a shovel full of shore on top to add the second floor. But when the fingers of the sea reached up and waved a wave at me, it tumbled down like dominoes and disappeared between my toes. Take a look at that poem there. That is filled with different stanzas. There are 4 stanzas there. I can count them. I have 1, 2, 3, 4. A scene is a part of a movie or a play that shows what is happening in a particular place and time. In a story, you'll see, like this example here, The Crowded House has a scene where they lay out what's actually happening in that scene. It's usually the setting, it takes place with the setting and tells everything that's going to happen in that scene for that particular play or movie. A chapter is a section of a book. Notice this example here with the different chapter here. A lot of you read chapter books, and books that have chapters in them sort themselves out by sections, and it's usually different topics for each section. So it's the same book talking about a lot of the same things, but they go into different details for each chapter. So now we're going to talk about the relationship between those things there, those 3 things, the chapter, the scene, and the stanza. We're going to look to see how many scenes were in that play, The Crowded House. Well, if you were to look at that whole story, you would see it broken out with scene 1, scene 2, scene 3. Usually that's laid out when you're looking at a play. There's all the different scenes in it. You'll have that word scenes in things like a movie or a play or even a television show. Some of you that read graphic novels, a lot of those different squares are different scenes for your story. So in your graphic novel, each square would be a different scene. Let's look at the poem. So that poem, we counted that there were 4 stanzas. And then the last one was the chapters. If we took the chapters and separated them all out, those chapters all have details within themselves. Notice, I want to talk quickly about how stanzas and chapters and scenes are very similar. They break apart, and that's where they can distinguish between the different things, the different details between one section to the other. So that is how the 3, chapter, scene, and stanza, are similar in some ways. And so what you need to focus on the most right now is poetry, which has stanzas in it. And let's think about, if I were to take that stanza, let me go back to the poem real quick. Let me flip back to where we saw the poem. If I were to look at this poem that has 4 stanzas in it, if I were to cut those apart and put them in a different order, would it still make sense? Probably not, because at the end it talks about how the house falls down at the end. And at the beginning, it talks about how they're building the house. And in between, it talks about some things that were happening in between when the house was standing, what they were doing to build that house. So it wouldn't make any sense if you cut each section apart and glued it together differently. So all of these things build on one another in a poem. When you're looking at this poem, you'll notice that this is a stanza. it looks like the paragraph. In this paragraph, or this poem has 4 stanzas. Each stanza has 4 lines. So each line, so there, and there. Notice that each one of these stanzas has 4 different lines. So if I were to add another stanza to this poem, I would have another stanza with 4 lines because I would be following the pattern that the author created. So I wouldn't just put a 2-line stanza in. It would have to be a 4-line stanza to follow the pattern that was already created by this author. We're going to continue to build on our learning about poems this week and next week. So enjoy. Have a great afternoon.